If you watched only the greyhounds, you might think that they were gaining. Their backs lengthened. Their feet struck and left the ground so quickly that for an instant, each dog seemed to be carried above the moor by its own effort. Then the land lifted. The Hare lifted with it, and the distance between them remained exactly where it was. The dogs were running hard enough to catch anything that they understood, but the Hare ahead of them was still small, still clear, still beyond their reach. One of the earliest accounts say that the hounds appeared to be coursing the wind. Now that description was printed in 1866, and it belonged to a story already being told higher up the River Esk in North Yorkshire. It was a story about a hare, a black dog, and an old woman who the district had judged long before the chase began. A later and fuller version placed it in Westerdale. The date was lost, and the names of the men were said to be remembered, but they were never printed. And the reason they went out was simple enough. They wanted a hare, and they couldn't find one. They had the ground, they had the dogs, and they had the day before them. Yet, mile after mile gave them nothing to run. Then they met Nanny. That is all the fuller account calls her. Old Nanny. A woman already known in the district as a witch. Now we're given no reliable portrait of her, no surname, no family, nothing about the life that she lived when the men and their dogs were not passing through it. But the story gives her knowledge. She told them where they would find a hare, and then she gave them one warning. They must not put a black dog after it. Not a prayer, not a threat. One colour, one animal, one condition. The black dog entered the story before it entered the landscape. The hare was where Nanny had said it would be. Large, brown, alive in the rough grass. 2 dogs were slipped, and the ground changed at once. What had been open moor became a line to be followed. Hare first, hounds behind. Men trying to hold all 3 within sight. A brown hare needs no witchcraft to make a hard course. It's built for open country, for speed, sudden turns, and the long refusal to be caught. For a while, this could still have been sport. The hare broke across Westerdale Moor. The hounds turned with it. The men followed as best they could, sometimes close enough to read the course, sometimes watching it happen at a distance that they could no longer command. The run lengthened. They had begun by choosing when to release the dogs. Now the animals were choosing the country. Slope, grass, broken air, another turn, and the hare kept enough of itself in front. Then a 3rd dog entered the course. Black. In the version published in 1891, it did not come from the men. No one slipped it. No owner was named. It simply joined the 2 hounds already running. An ordinary black dog as far as the accounts tell us. But it was the one dog Nanny had forbidden. The men were no longer deciding whether to obey her. The chase appeared to have made that decision for them. The black dog among them, the course ran over Ingleby boundary, and that boundary matters, because it's not the wall at which the chase ended. It was a territorial line crossed out on the moor, evidence of how far the animals had carried the men beyond the small hunt that they thought they were beginning. Then the course turned. By Hob Hole, that's what the story says. It began to circle back, across the country, towards Westerdale, towards the woman who told them where the hare would be. Miles of open pursuit narrowed to the foot of a wall. This was the wall of Nanny's garth, the enclosed ground beside her own small cottage. At its base was a smout, a low opening made for sheep to pass through. Nothing ceremonial, nothing built for witches, just a practical hole in a working wall. It was large enough for the hare, and the hare dropped towards it. The first dogs closed, and the black dog came closer. Stone filled the world in front of them, and the hare flattened for the opening, its body finding the space beneath the wall. The black dog reached at the haunch, and in the earlier account, the dog caught and bit, but it could not hold. In the later telling, the detail had become harsher. Fur, skin, and flesh were torn away, and then the hare was through, gone. The dogs remained outside, checked by the same stone that had admitted it. The men had not seen a woman change shape. They had seen a hare disappear through a sheephole with a wound on its hind quarter. But they knew whose wall stood above it, and they turned towards the cottage. The course stopped at Nanny's door. No more long ground, no room for dogs to stretch into their speed. Only a small, one-storey dwelling and a group of men arriving with the excitement of the chase still inside them. Now, the fuller account says that they forced, or at least obtained, entry. It doesn't give us enough to reconstruct that moment precisely. It tells us that the living and the sleeping spaces were only partly divided. It tells us that Nanny was in bed. And it tells us what the men did next. They asked what had happened to her. She said she'd fallen. They didn't believe her. They brought another explanation into the room with them. The warning, the black dog, the sheephole, and the piece torn from the hare. So they inspected her, and the story says they found a wound on the corresponding part of her body. Her injury wasn't recorded by a doctor. No contemporary statement survives. And we cannot place the two wounds beside one another and decide that they were identical. We have only what the story says, what the men saw, and what they concluded from seeing it. To them, the hunt was finished. The hare and Nanny carried the same wound. Therefore, they were the same body. Now, the fuller telling says the men were frightened enough to apologise, but they'd already crossed into a home. They'd already turned her body into the final ground of the hunt. And what happened to Nanny after they left? The earliest collector doesn't know whether she recovered. No trials follow, no confession, no death that can responsibly be added to make the ending stronger. The men leave the cottage with their conclusion, and the woman remains there without an ending. And if the story ended in that room, it would be a remarkably complete piece of witch folklore. A warning which is broken. An animal is wounded. A woman carries the mark. But the story survives in two principal printed forms, and they're not two independent witnesses. William Henderson printed the first located account in 1866. He'd received it from the Reverend J.C. Atkinson, who collected traditions around Danby and Cleveland. 25 years later, in 1891, Atkinson published the fuller Westerdale version himself. He said his informant had given him the men's names, their homes, the route, and the places involved. He did not print them. The details that might have allowed the story to be tested were said to exist, and then withheld. What we can test is the wording that reached the page. And between 1866 and 1891, the black dog changed owners. In the later version, which is the chase we've just followed, the men began with 2 other dogs, and the black dog arrived unexpectedly. It belonged to no one that the story could name, and the men did not choose to break Nanny's warning. The forbidden animal entered by itself. But Henderson's earlier version says something different. There, the men went out with the black dog, despite the warning. It was their dog, their decision, their hand that released it. The black dog did not take control from them. It carried their choice to the wall. Now, we cannot know which wording was closer to the story before either man printed it. Atkinson may have preserved a fuller telling. He may have heard another version. He may have remembered it differently. And the story may simply have altered, as stories do. But the effect of the change is clear. Nanny's supposed guilt remains exactly where it was. Only the men's responsibility begins to move. In one version, they create the test and then they accept its results as proof. In the other, the Moor appears to create the test for them. There may have been an injured woman in Westerdale. There may have been a hare that ran farther than men expected, and a dog that reached it beside a wall. Or this might have been another version of an older story, because wounded hares and wounded witches appear in traditions far beyond this one dale. The surviving evidence cannot choose between them. It tells us that the story was in print by 1866. The fuller version carries the chase across the Ingleby boundary and ends at the wall of Nanny's garth. And between one telling and the next, the black dog changes. But Nanny's full name is gone. So is the location of her cottage. And no one who preserved the story could say whether she recovered. The course is remembered in miles. The colour of the dog survives. The story remembers where the teeth closed and where the men looked for the answering wound. But the woman herself disappears at the same boundary as the hare, through one small opening beneath a working wall. The pursuit passes cleanly into folklore. The evidence does not. That's Giles Narrates, signing off.